Hey folks, this is Andrew, and today I thought I'd play through the Robotics Facility from Star Wars Dark Forces. This is one of my favorite levels. Nice little intro there. So yeah, the Robotics Facility, this is, I'd say about 3/4 into the game. And I like this one for a variety of reasons that we'll get into in a minute, but the idea is that there is a factory on this ice planet, and we are going to blow up the factory because it is producing some chemical compound that is related to the special weapon that is being produced by the Empire that involves dark troopers. So we've got like these volatile chemicals that we need to worry about, and we might need like a breathing mask to protect ourselves. And we've got dark troopers to worry about, and also it's cold and snowy, and everybody likes snow missions, so that's a good thing. And then it breaks it down into actual objectives, which it's kind of a bit silly that it specifies all three charges. But yeah, that's what we're gonna do. And I'm just going to play on easy, so I don't have to worry too much about getting my butt kicked. All right. Beautiful, beautiful little animation there. Yeah, so our first glimpse, we've got a lot of ice. And I think this might be like a rock material that gets reused elsewhere in the game and gets like recolored, which, you know, this is a early 90s game, so getting maximum reuse out of these things is important. But yeah, our first impression, we've got a clear sky and it just looks cold, right? So a good setup, and we've got flowing water. So maybe it's not that cold, or maybe it's a special kind of ice that, it's like very salty ice or something, so it's really difficult for it to freeze. But what I like about this is it gives us a sense of direction to the layout, because it's not just a stream of standing water, it's a stream that is flowing in a direction from a high point into this area, and we get our first glimpse of this facility that we're going to be spending our time kind of slowly unpacking. So at this point we get kind of this choice, but I think we're intended to go left because we've got some enemies over this way. We've got some enemies over that way too, so I think though the idea is for us to go this way. But what I like about this structure is that it's kind of like a thief level, in that it feels like there's this big exterior that we're kind of patrolling the outside of and exploring and trying to untangle. You've got to love the iMuse sound system, dynamically switching to the combat music. For early 90s, that was really impressive tech. So interesting thing about the grenades is that the longer you hold them, the farther you throw them. So if I just tap it, if I tap it and don't even run, it'll actually hurt me. But if I hold it, then I really chuck it, which is kind of an awkward thing. A lot of games in the 90s and early 2000s did that as a mechanic. Yeah, so I think we're intended to go this way first because there's a door that's locked and we need a blue key to get it. So now, in order to get into this compound, we are looking for a blue key. And I have some foreknowledge because I've played this before, but the blue key is right up there. So I don't think we can get a view of it, unfortunately, but We're gonna loop all the way around. And again, kind of like Thief, we are sort of probing this outer edge to find our way into the facility. And it's a little bit of a mystery. Alright, so this was that choice junction earlier, so if we'd taken the right path, we wouldn't have seen that door that is locked by the blue key. And now we've got another little choice, but this one very quickly dead ends as this kind of frozen pond. And this is interesting to me as, or I guess it's not frozen, but the stream is kind of dead ending here at this pond. Oop. Accidentally hit control there trying to crouch jump, which I don't think is even a feature of Dark Forces. Like, there is a crouch, but I don't think crouch jump works. But anyway, that's why I was shooting randomly. So we've got another little pocket here. And now if we come around here, we've got all this expanse of the facility exterior. It's just kind of building up the mystery. Ooh, and now we've got a fun new mechanic, which is this frozen ice, as opposed to, like, this is, I guess, snow that we're standing on. And with the snow, we've got a decent amount of friction. Like, it's still a pretty slidey game, but decent amount of friction. And now on this, that's a whole lot of slipperiness, very low friction. So we've got this pickup on the other side, and we also had that stormtrooper, and both those things are nice indicator of, I guess I've got to make it across that gap. And that's kind of a scary jump to do. And the nice thing here is that if I miss it, there is a landing down here for me. So it's a little hard to tell because of the way that this game does 3D perspective. But there's a chasm to either side of me here, so I've got to be really careful on these slippery steps. And I've got to do this really careful platforming. But the nice thing about this platforming is that I can't possibly, with any of these, overjump, or because I've got this wall on the one side and I've got these kind of steps going forward, if I jump too far, I'm not going to overshoot. I'm just going to hit a wall. And I think I picked them up there already, but yeah. So my reward for accidentally falling into the pit is that now I have ice cleats, which you can see now I've got all this friction. In fact, I think even better friction than... I don't know, it's about the same. It's about like normal snow now. If I take this off, then whoa, right back to Slippery Town. So it's a nice little recovery mechanic that now this jump is a lot easier to do because I don't have to worry about friction and I can just jump right across. One thing that is a little bit awkward about it is that the jump does seem to have, like, there's maybe I don't know, 1/10 of a second of input delay between me hitting the spacebar and the character actually jumping. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. It's one of those things that's it's easy to just run off of an edge rather than timing the jump, and I feel like I've got to kind of jump before I reach the edge rather than right at it. But anyway, onward we go. Now here we've got kind of a fun moment. So one thing that's a bit awkward with Dark Forces, but at the time was really cool because, like, the comparison was Doom. You've got up and down look on the number pad, and you can recenter as well. It's really awkward. So normally you can just let the gun kind of auto-aim. You can see how my shot there is hitting the wall and then goes up to aim at them with the height, which is very Doom-like. So it still works, but if you want to be more precise, you've got this as an option as well, which I'm going to leave those guys alive for now. I think we'll probably see them later. But the nice thing about windows like that one and this one is they continue to give us this feeling of this exterior that we're probing. Let's actually try and get a grenade in here. Oh, I'm sorry, a thermal detonator. Yeah, it's pretty fun. Alright, so now we've got this section here, which seems to invite a little exploration, but still not our route in. We've got the sound of running water again, and that looks like a way in. We also have this behind the waterfall, which is very sneaky. We've got ice caves. And again, the thing I really like about the running water throughout this level is that it gives this sense of direction and like there's a bigger process that you're kind of seeing a snapshot of. Like this water is coming from somewhere and it's going somewhere. Also, I don't think I mentioned earlier, but the flowing water does actually push the character along, so if I press nothing here, I am still moving. And I can swim against the current, but it's kind of a cool mechanic, and something that wasn't in Doom. So now I've picked up the blue key, and there's a conveyor belt ahead. So if I jump and go into the conveyor belt, this is now my path into the facility. But if I miss that jump, and say I landed down here, so long as I picked up that blue key, I now have a way back through that door we saw earlier, and can proceed into the facility this way. So the key is not really a... Like with Quake and Doom levels, the keys are often a way of indicating a goal for the player. In this case, it's more like a backup plan. It's a recovery tool, which is a kind of interesting difference in how it approaches it. Yeah, so now we're on top of that wall that we were kind of probing all the way around. And that's back towards where we started. And kind of like the river, we've got this moving conveyor belt, which again has a similar kind of process feeling to it, where there's an upstream and a downstream, and I am part of something bigger than what I see. So now that we're on this conveyor belt, one thing, well, let me clear these guys first, but a lot of those little pockets that we were seeing earlier, like these spots down here, were basically a consequence of the conveyor belt. If I fall off to either side, they need a way to get me back on track, and that's what some of these dead-end pockets are doing. And part of that, I think, is because the way this game works, you can't really have floor over floor, or where they do have floor over floor, it's sort of a fake floor over floor, which means that these pockets you got to be really careful of to make sure the player doesn't actually get stuck. So now, with this little encounter we just had, there's a door blocking my way forward, and we've got these soldiers over here that I shot at. And with the way they were positioned, there's a good chance while I was shooting that I might hit that button there, which would open this door. That door is on a very short timer, so probably while shooting at these guys I would have hit that button, the door would have opened, and then it would have closed before I would go through it. Which is kind of a nice, oh hey, there's something here I need to interact with, I need to time. It's kind of a small puzzle in a way. And now I've got all this background sound. I think those are just sounds playing from various moving elements, but we've got all this background sound that makes it feel like we're in some kind of factory. Also, at the end of this conveyor belt, we've got one of these crates, which I'm guessing is what normally is moving along these conveyor belts, because we saw a couple of these on the start of the conveyor belt as well. We can do a little platforming to get some grenades or thermal detonators. It's also nice getting these moments here where you get glimpses of other parts of the facility. I'm not sure if we actually end up in this section, but it's just cool to see that this is a bigger place. In fact, let me jump off the conveyor belt here for a second and pull up the map. So, let's see. I really like the kind of XCOM style. We've got these layers, like old school, like 93 XCOM or 94, I always forget. Yeah, so you can see this huge facility that we've just done this big exploration of, and now we are inside, or I guess this is the floor above, the high ground that we've just rode the conveyor belt on. And this is the path that it cut through. We still have some stuff to see in the floors below us. Now at this point, I think what the player's probably going to do is what I've just done here and get squashed by this crusher, which is kind of a fun joke to play on the player. It didn't actually do that much damage. I think maybe because I'm on easy difficulty. I think there may have also been a health pickup right as I got hit by this crusher. But, oh, I was going to do it again. Yeah, so it did less than 50 damage to my shields. And now, popping out the other side, I've got some health packs right here in case it brought me too low. Yeah, now we get this introduction to this nasty kind of glue stuff, which does damage to us, so we don't want to stay in that. And if we do jump in, then again, there are health packs here. Health packs in older shooters kind of behave like a checkpoint in a way, or sort of a soft checkpoint because you can use it up. But like, we don't have any enemies around, no combat, it's just platforming and exploration. But the way forward is kind of hinted to us, kind of like that earlier platforming section across the ice. It's hinted to us with this little pickup on this ledge here. So if we jump, this is a very, very narrow ledge. I think this feels a little bit awkward to me, like that. It's not very readable. But I think the idea is that the player is supposed to make a jump and not, you know, just walk off onto the ledge. It should feel risky. And that's, I think, one of the big struggles of first-person platforming. It's really hard to create moments that feel risky without creating readability problems or feeling like, you know, how am I actually standing? Where would my feet actually be on that 2-inch wide ledge? Yeah, so now we've got this other crusher, whatever this is. It's like stirring up the goop down here. I don't think there's actually a risk of this crushing me. I don't think. Yeah, it seems like each individual chunk is kind of moving independently. But now we've got another crusher, and because this one is currently operating, it's less likely we're going to get crushed by it, and if I do get crushed by it, it's totally my fault. Now this section feels a little bit weird to me. Like this we've just been in the factory and we've had all this interior feeling space, and now we've got this moment that's exterior again. I guess maybe the idea is to remind us that, oh yeah, this is still on an ice planet, and there was still this exterior space, but I'm not sure if it is really necessary, and it makes the factory seem smaller and more fragmented. Okay, so here we've got another little combat encounter. And this one's kind of fun in that the conveyor belt is basically pulling us into combat. So even if I want to be really cautious here and like try and fight from the corners, right? If I want to try and stand back here and avoid these guys, it's tough because I'm fighting the conveyor belt. And same thing here, where probably these guys get revealed like they did a second ago, right here. But once they've engaged me in combat, they can now come around here. So if I'm going to retreat, I've got to retreat all the way back here. So really, I've just got to deal with them or rush forward and deal with them here. And I think that's a good way of forcing us into the combat without it being unfair or cheap. But yeah, we've got a locked door again, and this is a little bit of a reminder of, hey, remember last time there was a conveyor belt that went into a locked door? How did we deal with that? And previously it was a button they have to shoot, but here it's a switch they have to push. In fact, I think, yeah, so with the way the button is on the wall, it's kind of hard to see on this side, but if we go here, yeah, we get the button framed pretty clearly against that window, so it's a pretty good bit of pacing, or a good bit of composition to create the pacing that it wants. And also, this is just a nice mix of, we got the glue hazard down there, and we've got the conveyor belts. It's just, they've kind of gradually introduced these various elements, and now they're starting to mix them all together. The beeping that's going off is because I picked up a super shield of some sort, and it wore off because I was using it. Cool, so now I think probably what it wants us to do is just jump across the gap here. We've got this fan going up there. And from here, yeah, so we need the red key. And this is a route into the ventilation system, which is, it's like layer within layer. Like, first layer was exploring the outside of this ice planet, going into the facility, and now that we're in the facility, now we're going like deeper into the ventilation system. But what we can also do here is jump across, and there's a button here that we can turn to disable the fan, which is up there. I'm not going to do that. I think this is something the level could do better. It's not clear what the fan does and how disabling it will actually help. But we pick up the red key here, and that lets us open this door and brings us back to where we were just a second ago, where we can open up the route to the vent. But yeah, the fan, I believe... Ooh, and this is a nice dark section. So we do have a flashlight. Let's see. And in that previous section, I also picked up a gas mask, which, if you remember from the mission briefing, is something that Jan recommended we get. But yeah, we do have a flashlight, which helps in these dark sections. Yeah, so that button just disabled this fan, which is a different fan from the previous one. And again, that's something that I'm not sure it did a great job of making clear. But yeah, we're down in this pit, and if we don't activate our gas mask, which is bound to F4, our health slowly drains. If we do activate that fan earlier on, what that does is it vents these toxic fumes out of here, which means that we don't even need a gas mask. And it's a little bit weird. It'd be kind of nice if we encountered this space and encountered the toxic fumes before we encounter the fan and encounter the opportunity to even turn the fan on. It's just kind of the lock door and key pattern, where you want to see the lock door before you see the key. In this case, you want to see the toxic fumes, or feel the effect of them before you feel the solution. So this is one of the nasty bits about first-person platforming in these older games. The character box is, or the character collision I should say, is, I believe, an axis-aligned bounding box, which is basically a cuboid, which means that against angles like those down there, it can be really hard to jump up on ledges. Like the easiest jumps to do with an axis-aligned bounding box are on 90-degree angles. And this very much is not on a 90-degree angle. Like if we look at this layout, it's very beautifully all sorts of weird angles. But consequence is that the platforming feels bad, which is very much a trade-off. Alright, so this is our last charged place.
All charges set. Good job. Let's blow this ice cube. Woman after my own heart.
And now we just need to escape. But we've got a buddy that joined us. This is one of the Dark Troopers that the mission briefing gave us a heads up about. And they've got a rocket launcher. And basically this is kind of a mini boss encounter. Also, cool, so we killed him. I am playing on easy, so that was pretty easy. But I forgot to mention, when we jumped down that ventilation shaft, that was a one-way drop, so we don't know exactly how to go forward from here, which is kind of an interesting question. And also meant that we had to kill that Dark Trooper. There's no backing out and fighting from a previous entrance, or kiting the enemy into a new area. It's kind of a boss arena that we're stuck in. And I believe this is where the enemy spawns in from. So I guess we could have just avoided him and gone in through here. I don't think this opens when you kill him, but I'm not totally sure. And this section's really fun because at this point, okay, we've got the toxic fumes, we've got the gas mask, we planted the charges, we've basically done all the things in the mission briefing. And now it's just extraction, right? But what's this thing? By standing around, I let it spawn right behind me, which I probably shouldn't have done. And also by playing on easy, it was smaller health pool. But normally what happens here is the player goes into this space and starts moving around trying to find the exit, and they hear all of this clacking mechanical sounds. Like, is there some big monster on the other side of these locked doors here? What is this? And as the player is exploring this intentionally complicated space, like it's intentionally maze-like, that's when that back door opens, and I believe it's a Dark Trooper prototype that opens up, and we get chased around this labyrinth by this melee enemy. And if we turn off our headlight, it's even darker. Yeah, so it's just this really spooky experience, especially with the way that you get the muzzle flash. It's just wonderful. And this wasn't anywhere in the mission briefing. This is kind of catching the player off guard as this extra little twist. But now we've conquered the Dark Trooper prototype, and we've completed our mission, so we can jump out. And at this point, you may remember, hey, this is the area that we fell down earlier. So it's a really good reuse of this both as a recovery element and now as our level exit. Oop. Of course, I mentioned earlier there's no danger of overshooting, and I've demonstrated that that's not completely true. Ah, Christ. Yeah, this is the problem of, like I said, the axis-aligned bounding box. Platforming on these angles is really nasty. There we go. Yeah, I think, like I mentioned with the other section, it's very easy or very tempting when doing a first-person platform section from a level design perspective. It's very tempting to make it feel dangerous, and there are a lot of different ways of doing that, and making little tiny platforms is kind of the most obvious way of doing that, but also the one that makes for some of the most frustrating and kind of nasty gameplay. But I think also I'm probably just bad. I think that's what I'm really saying. But yeah, at this point, we're now back outside of the facility, and we are free to go to the exit. But one more thing before we go there, I want to go back around to the left, where, yeah, so here are these crates that I guess are being loaded onto this conveyor belt. If there's some kind of loading crane or some other context to explain how they get up there, that'd be, I think, like, it's kind of a missing piece of this. But, you know, you also have to consider what the constraints were for the tools. And here we've got the river that we saw earlier. And it's just kind of a nice landmark. It's not like a big tower or a weenie or a big set piece kind of thing. It's just a river flowing in a direction. And it tells us, hey, we were downstream, now we're going upstream. I know where I am, I know where I'm going. And now we're back to our spaceship. And that is the end of the level. All right, well, thank you all for joining me for that tour of Dark Forces, the Robotics Facility.